Okay, it's on.
Okay. Call meeting to order. We'll have to pledge allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Have a roll call.
Helsley. Patrick. Here. Voigt.
Here.
Zuber.
Here.
Bruner.
Here.
Farnham. Jennings.
Here. Are there any additions or corrections to the April 15, 2015 minutes? If not, I'd entertain a motion to approve them.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the April 15th, 2015 minutes. All those in favor by the usual sign.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Claims against the county.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the claims for the county. All those in favor.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. County board member claims.
So moved. Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the county board member claims. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Public comment.
Good morning. My name is Robert Bogue, and I'm an Edgar County resident. This morning I have a couple of things I'd like to share with the county board. First, I'd like to begin with the discussion of the December 6th, 2013 Airport Committee, Airport Advisory Board meeting that was determined to be an illegal meeting, a meeting in violation of the Open Meetings Act by the Attorney General of the State of Illinois. I have feel as a taxpayer that if this is an illegal meeting, and it was, the taxpayers in the county should not have to pay or reimburse the county board members for attending that meeting, for conducting that meeting. I've learned that one county board member reimbursed the county, returned the $25 compensation along with some travel funds and whatever. But I've also, as of last count, have learned that Jennings and Helsley and Farnham and Voigt have not refunded to the county the money they received for attending that meeting and participating in what was determined to be an illegal meeting. I'd ask them to do that. The second issue I'd like to bring to the County Board today is one involving Jerry Griffin, the Edgar County Airport Manager. There is sufficient cause and sufficient reason to have terminated him long ago. Why? Sufficient documents, sufficient proof. Why hasn't the County Board been responsible in managing this debacle and dismissed him? The last item I'd like to bring to your attention is your new airport grant. This is a revision from last year's airport project, and I haven't had a chance to review it in great detail. But I've already noticed two significant deceptions, misstatements, two significant reasons why that grant will not likely move forward. This is a repeat of what took place last year. This is a repeat of what caused the FAA to intervene and halt that project. I asked this county board to recall that project and fix the inaccuracies, as you call them, and then resend it. You got any questions? Anybody? Okay.
Thank you. Any other public comment? Seeing none, we'll move to item 8, presentation by Joe Doherty of fiscal year 14 audit.
Thank you. If you've all got copies of the reports there, I've got just a few pages I wanted to kind of go over and then highlight. And then I got a couple of letters in the back that I wanted to have a brief discussion on. So I would start out with, if you would turn to page 1 of 78. This is the independent auditor's report. I want to point out there is the opinion. We are expressing an opinion on the financial statements on a modified cash basis, and from that standpoint, we have no problems of concern. We've given an unqualified opinion on that presentation. On page 3, this is a separate opinion based upon the review of internal controls. And from that standpoint, now, I do have some comments we will make about that later, but our review of the internal controls is to review the procedures and so forth that's in place. And for the most part, we don't have any concerns there, but as I say, I do have a letter that I'll kind of, later on, I'll kind of highlight a few things that I think we should take a look at down the road. On page 7, this is kind of a summary of your changes in your net assets for the year. As you can see, it's on a comparable basis, and this is your governmental activities. Last year, example, in November of 13, you had $13,531,000 worth of revenues. This year, for the November 30 of 14, that increased up to $14,805,000. The disbursements, there's a little bit of change. It went from $15,372,000 to $15,858,000. So, whereas last year, in the 13 period, you had a deficit there of $1,840,000, which was a decline in your net assets. This year, with the change, that was reduced to $1,053,000 deficit as a change in the net assets. So you've made some progress from that standpoint, that the amount of deficit was reduced this past year. Page 10, this is your statement of activities on a modified cash basis. And I present this because this lets you take a little bit of a different look at it. This page, we're showing the expenditures there of $15,858,835. The next column there shows the actual charges, that's where you get reimbursements and charges and so forth directly for some of these particular programs that are involved in your expenditures. That amounted to $3,941,000. Your operating grant contributions of $599,000. So that shows an $11,317,000 worth of deficit from the standpoint that is to be funded out of your general activities, your general revenues. And if you move on down to your next column there, your general revenues was $10,284,000. So that comes back to that net change there, $1,053,000 deficit. And that is a comparison to, as I said earlier, to the $1,840,000 in the previous year. So the net change during that period is the operationals. It's still got a deficit, but you did make improvements in what that deficit, the amount of that deficit. On page 13, I wanted to just point this out because this just gives you basically the same numbers but in a different format, a different presentation. Here you can see how much pertains to the general fund, how much to the highway, how much to the motor fuel tax, emergency fund, and so forth. So I'm not going to go through the detail, but that type of detail is in there so you can pick that type of stuff out. On page 22, the reason I go to this page is because when you look at the available funds in some of your different fund balances and so forth, I point this out because some of those are restricted. They're restricted due to the various conditions, the why and how the money came in and so forth. So when you look at those fund balances in any of the funds, you need to also take this into consideration. Some of those are legal restrictions. They can only be spent in certain ways and certain things and so forth. Others are what called assigned. That is, you as a board have assigned and designated certain monies that's only gonna go to certain projects and so forth. And then you have your third column of unassigned. So when you're really looking at available monies in any particular fund and so forth, you need to take these three considerations in there. Whether it is restricted, it's assigned, or is it general unassigned monies at this point to be spent at the board discretion. On page 27, I just point this out because this is a summary of the leases that are in place. And with you got your leases, you'll notice that some of those are 60-month leases and 4-year leases and so forth. So if you're looking at available monies and so forth, you need to take into consideration what have you already committed through the form of leases and so forth. So we put that type of detail in there for just management information. On page 34, this is the start of the budget comparison in the general fund so that you can look at your actual and compare it to your budget and see what your variances are. And then we got the prior year in there for comparative purposes also. And just taking the general fund revenues there, in 2013, that was $3,449,000. In 14, that's $3,991,000. So you can see that your revenues are actually increased compared to the budget, a $68,000 budget variance. So that's overall with those kind of monies and so forth, that's staying within your budget fairly well. Your disbursements in your next columns down there, here again, you look at the total budget is $2,201,000. You actually spent $2,083,000. So you're actually underspent on your budget in that particular category by $117,000. So this gives you the details so you can go through and kind of pick out where you are in your respective funds and so forth. And if you just look at that, really you've done a fairly good job of following your budget as to what you're anticipating. The page 41, I point this out because this is somewhat similar to what I was just talking about, but it gives it in a different presentation here. So there's a lot of detail in here, depending on what you're looking at and how you're going about and what projects and so forth. You can look back in these type of reports and get some good information, what some of the history has been, how you've compared in prior years and so forth. So that's why I say I go through this in a very quick fashion and hitting the highlights, because if I went through this in detail, we'd be here the rest of the day, probably in tomorrow. I don't think anyone wants to do that. So, page 71.
I think Jeff wants to stay after the meeting and go through that all.
Okay,
We've actually met a couple of times, so
yes we have.
I've been through it more than.
On page 71, I put this in here because this is usually one that's kind of interesting to the taxpayers in the county. And as you can see, that the top row there is the assessed valuation in the county as to how it's changed in the last 4 years there, 2010 up to 2013. You can see that the assessed valuation of the property has gone from $264 million up to $286,000 in that, and it's just been a steady increase during that period. You get into those next columns, and this is one that people like to look at. Your first line there is your general corporate fund. In 2010, that rate was 27 cents. In 2013, that was 26.9. So it actually had dropped a little bit, but you can see it's been fairly consistent throughout the period. And you move on down into your county highway, you can see the consistency there, 0.09 versus 0.094. Federal aid matching, county aid to township bridges, county retirement funds, and so forth. So it's been fairly consistent throughout during this whole period. And the next few pages is just continuation of the different funds and so forth. Now, in page 73, this is our report on the compliance with the major programs. And from the standpoint of your compliance with your major programs, we really have an unqualified opinion there. And I just, in the last paragraph on that page, All material respects with the types of compliance requirements referred to above have had a direct and material effect, and no concerns from that standpoint. Now, the one page that I really wanted to refer to, I said earlier that I was going to mention a few things. If you go to the last report, this is after the page numbers, this is a separate report. It's the second from the end report. There's 4 pages attached, that's 2 different reports there. I'm going to the first page of that first report, and that is the in planning and performing our audit of the financial statements. This is where we review some of the internal controls that are in place and come up with some recommendations or concerns and so forth. And if you look at the number 1, address preparation of financial statements, this is kind of a reminder that you as a board are responsible for the presentation of this data. And our responsibility is to come in and see that you're following the procedures to make sure that those are fairly presented. And for the most part, I think they're coming along very well. We didn't have any major concerns from that standpoint. But I do want to point out that anytime you look at internal controls, you've got to look at the overall presentation of them. And that's where, if you go to the next page there, as a fraud risk assessment, this is something that I would recommend any board take a look at from their standpoint, is because you are ultimately responsible for the presentation of this material and the course of action and what happens with all of these dollars and so forth, how they come in and how they're spent and so forth. We suggest that periodically you as a board kind of go through this fraud risk assessment and look and see, is this a potential area in our concern that we would have in our area? So I've kind of highlighted some of the things. What individuals in the county have opportunity to misappropriate assets? Have you really gone through an assessment like that and considered that? If so, what type of controls and have you placed in effect? Are there any known pressures that would motivate employees with the opportunity to misappropriate assets? What assets in the county are susceptible to misappropriation? Are there any known internal control weaknesses that would allow misappropriation? How could assets be stolen? How could potential misappropriation of assets be concealed? So I'm not saying that we've got that situation, but I'm just saying that's something as a general course that any board should take into consideration from time to time and have kind of a review of these and make your own fraud risk assessment in your own operation so that you don't run into those situations down the road. The number 3 there, this is one that we've commented about in previous years, and that has improved tremendously. In fact, I think of paying off of our concept is that you should only pay off of original invoices, and for the most part, that is being done. I think we only found a couple of 3 minor exceptions on that. So that's something that you've taken to heart from previous years and really cleaned that up. Number 4 on the payroll, that's one that I know that you're reviewing that right now on your payroll procedures and so forth. And I think you've even got a recommendation out that probably later this fall there will be an implementation. The one thing I'd like to mention about that, not only is that going to strengthen your controls on controlling your payroll and so forth, but there's some things coming out from the federal government right now. They're coming up with some new compliance requirements and so forth. And one of the things that they're saying is in the future, if you have someone that's saying you're assigned 30% of your time to this particular federal money project, they're saying that's not going to fly in the future. You're going to have those signed timesheets because they're going to have to sign and say, I spent X number of hours and sign it on that particular project. So what you're doing in the changing of your payroll is going to fit into this new issue very well. So that's going to, so at this point, I don't think that's really an option that you've got. It's one that you're going to have to do in some form. So the federal governments, anytime they put money out, they seem to be attaching more and more strings to them, and this is just another one that they've attached. That's going to require that you really have some type of internal cost system set up so that you can capture all the cost for that particular project, where in the past, they've allowed you to make some arbitrary, they'd say, okay, this person is, they assign 30% of their time to that project. Now, they're gonna say if there's 30%, let's see the timesheets they've signed off and say they've actually spent that time on that particular project. So that payroll that you're considering, I think, is something I really suggest you continue on, follow through on that. Another area that we were taking a look at is the use of credit cards. I think the use of credit cards, you need to establish some type of policy is to limit the number of credit cards and establish some type of controls as maybe as to how much can be placed on it, and have someone in the organization kind of as a secondary backup that reviews this to make sure that they are following your procedures and so forth. So we did not find any problems on those this year, but we suggest that you take a look at that, because that's an area that it could use a little tightening up of controls and so forth from just overall. Yes,
Wasn't that a situation where we were actually approving something after the fact?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
so,
So if you might want to establish some policy, there might be emergency situations that they would need to use it, but establish some type of credit limit. That they can't just arbitrarily go in and charge up a couple $1,000s when maybe only they need 500. But that comes back under this whole fraud risk assessment that you take a look at. And I think for the most part, then, that pretty well covers what I wanted to cover in the highlights here today. Any questions?
Mr. Chairman, just so you know, we're not going to approve or accept the audit today. That's not on the agenda. So we will have an opportunity, obviously, to ask questions today, but if there are things, as you suggested, over the next month or so, we can then ask for clarification on that,
Yes.
and then have it on the agenda to accept the audit and process it like it should be, so we know.
Question. You will, once you finalize all this, you'll be submitting the required one to the state? That
Yes,
was- okay.
yes.
But, and the deadline's May 31st, so how's that gonna be with you, Jeff, when you're saying?
Oh, is it May 31st?
6 months after the end of the fiscal year? And so I'm concerned about that.
It could possibly, if you've got a deadline that you're working on from that standpoint, I think we can still get an extension on that if the state can, right?
Yes. It just wasn't put in here to accept
Right.
it, so, I mean, we can't accept it, so.
Do you request it, or does the county of Edgar request this extension? I've done it before, but it was kind of a,
It's kind of a joint effort,
Okay.
really, Don. So,
okay.
I'm sorry, I mean.
No, that's all right. No, I just wanna make sure we,
yeah.
So is that what we're gonna try to do then?
We're gonna do an extension or have a special meeting to prove the,
I mean, is the
We can do
extension
either
way
one.
out of line?
Yeah,
Well, no,
extensions
it's-
are not all that
It's
common.
automatic, I mean, it's just by request.
Yeah,
And that way we'll have a month to look over to see if we have questions, more so than just automatically.
I didn't realize we were at May 31st, I thought we had, I don't know why. I
well,
thought it was
there have been
July.
previous years where we went ahead and got the extensions.
Oh, maybe that's why.
Kind of preventive medicine. We just did it more as a.
I just think it's important that we have a chance to look at it a little bit, and then if there's questions.
yeah. So, yeah, if that's what you want to do, we'll work with Don, we'll get the extension in. And as Larry said, it's pretty well automatic to get it.
And it's really pretty simple.
Yeah.
any other questions of Joe?
Joe, was there anything that, I mean, you went over some of these items, is there anything that really stuck out in your mind? I know you have this page here that you kind of went over these 6 items as far as the general shape. You know, one of the things that we worry a lot about is our general funds.
Right.
And am I reading this correctly, that we went in 2013 or whatever from 630 to 570 to 493,
Which page you on?
35?
Yeah,
Yes.
we've improved our
You've
situation
improved the situation.
by about 137,000.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was reading
Right.
right on the general
You're
fund.
still in the deficit, but you're in a lesser deficit.
Yeah.
Right. That's all I'm
So it's
reading.
a good trend, yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, that's what I thought was off the last year.
And our
Well-
trend this year is to knock another 150 off, so we'll see how that works out.
If there are no more questions, I'd like to make a comment. I would like to thank the office holders who were very helpful and cooperative in engaging us. We bugged the heck out of them, trying to get all this information and so forth, so I know that we gotta be a thorn in their side at that time, so we appreciate their help.
I'd like to thank you guys for getting us this report in a timely fashion where we can actually use it in there. Jeff, would you and the Finance Committee be willing to work with Joe and work with the department heads on these areas of concern, find out exactly what, and make sure that,
And we'll report back to the board.
okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Item number 9, highway. Number 1 is a resolution authorizing the county clerk to sign, transmit 2 certified copies of BLR 09215, anticipation of township bridge funds, Sims Township, section 11-14126-00-BR. Aaron?
Fellas, this is the resolution stating that you anticipate using TVP for your match on the major bridge, and that you don't have the TVP funds available at this time. So you're using, we've done, ever since I've been here, and I'm sure since before I was here, we typically build structures prior and use county money to fund the match, and then reimburse ourselves for township bridge program dollars. The only qualifier I'll make, and I'll make it quick, is that we had a pretty elaborate discussion Monday regarding whether or not the county board is confident that the TBP program will be there when it comes time to reimburse. And my recommendation is that you continue to count on it being there. But certainly I'd want to volley that to the board.
I move the resolution, Mr. Chairman.
A second.
We'll have a roll call.
Patrick,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Zuber,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Resolution passed. Item number 2 is a resolution authorizing the county board chairman to sign economic development TARP agreement BLR 05322 and the clerk to transmit BLR 03210, establishing a class 3 designated truck route for the following: preliminary engineering CH33 section 13-00121-00-WR. Aaron?
I'll address both these at the same time, if that's okay. If you look at the very bottom of both items, one's a -00WR and one's a -01WR. They're exactly the same type of arrangement. They're for 2 sections on Prairie's Edge. You're authorizing Ben to sign an agreement for preliminary engineering only, and you're authorizing Augie to transmit a certified copy designating Prairie's Edge as a class 3 truck route on both of these projects. They're separate because one will be a contractor-led section and the other one will be a day labor-led section. Any questions on what you're authorizing? You're only authorizing TE. The money has already been expended. Should you locally execute it, and should it get stateside executed, we're in line to receive half of the engineering that we've already expended.
I move the resolution, number 2.
Second.
A roll call.
Patrick,
Yes.
Voigt,
Yes.
Zuber,
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
4.
Resolution passed. Resolution number 3 is a resolution authorizing county board chairman to sign economic development / TARP agreement BLR 05322 and the clerk to transmit BLR 03210, establishing a class 3 designated truck route for the following: preliminary engineering CH33 section 13-00121-01-WR.
Mr. Chairman, I move the resolution.
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. We'll have a roll call vote.
Patrick?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Zuber?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
The resolution passed. Item 10, accept filing of administrative order 2015-4 reappointing Joe Good as jury commissioner.
So move. What is this really?
It's an administrative order from the judge that got filed in my office. And historically, it's more of a notation, or makes it public, or official, what I'm trying to say, but makes it official.
What's a jury commissioner? Huh? That's what I thought. I didn't know if it was that simple or not. Okay, I'll go ahead with that motion.
It's that simple.
I'll say.
We have a motion and a second to accept filing of administrative order 2015-4 reappointing Joe Good as jury commissioner. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried. Item 11 is a resolution to reappoint James R. Trogdon, trustee of the Paris Community Fire Protection District.
So moved.
I'll second.
We have a motion to accept a second on the resolution to reappoint James Trogdon, trustee of the Paris Community Fire District. We'll have a roll call.
Patrick?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Zuber?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Resolution passed. Item 12 is a resolution as to the acceptance of office, oath, and bond of James R. Trogdon, trustee of the Paris Community Fire Protection District.
I'll go ahead and make that motion, seeing as how we've already put him in as the trustee. Want to give him an oath and bond?
Yes. Did I have a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second on the resolution. All those in favor?
Aye.
No, we have to.
Oh, we better have a roll call.
Yeah. Patrick?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Zuber?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Resolution passed. We have a resolution for renewal of special events liquor license for Robert E. Morgan doing business as Castlefin Vineyard and Winery Incorporated.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. We'll have a roll call.
Patrick?
Yes.
Voigt?
Yes.
Zuber?
Yes.
Brunner?
Yes.
Motion carried. Item 14, office and department head reports. Don, you want to start this?
Yes, your report that you normally get is in front of you. And I don't know what, Jeff, I don't know what we decided yesterday, but if you're comparing apples to apples, a year ago, 2 pay periods had hit on that number of a year ago. So we're really at the same number of pay periods in each fiscal year, so you can compare those. I do have the line of credit arranged. I just need to sign the papers. And I'm making myself delay it because I think in my own way I'm not going to have to borrow, but I may be just doing wishful thinking. I'm going to probably have to go ahead and sign the papers, but we may squeeze by.
But they'd be on the other funds, they'd be on the,
Right. Traditionally or historically, what has pushed us to this point is our levied funds down here, IMRF, and I think it's mainly been IMRF and maybe what, was it FIC or TORC?
toward.
Yeah, TORC, there it is. So, yeah, look at your own report, Don, you might figure that out. That's what has historically pushed us over the edge where we've had to borrow a month or two before I'd get our first distribution. As far as getting money for our distribution, I know Augie will probably comment on this, but we're getting very close to being able to print the tax bills up and get them out. They will have a traditional due dates, probably in July and September like we've had. Other than that, I will talk with Joe or Larry about getting that extension done. And do you have any questions? Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Aaron?
I was gonna talk quite a bit, but I know Dan has to leave. But I have nothing.
I can read the tape.
I have nothing to say.
Thank you. Circuit Clerk?
I would just like to thank the county board and Jeff for letting me complete the painting in my office. I think it looks very nice, and I'm glad to have it done, so thank you.
Thank you. Supervisor assessment.
I asked Augie to submit the final board of review report so that you wouldn't have, or I wouldn't have to read it to you, you can see. The only thing I wanted to point out was that the final multiplier came back the same as the tentative, 0.9709. And also the senior citizen homestead exemption numbers will be down next year quite a bit because we've requested the annual verification. Also, I just wanted to bring up the fact that our 2015 initial field work in all quadrennial reassessment townships and all townships that don't have assessors is complete. That usually is due in our office by June 15th, so we are well ahead of schedule. Thank you.
Thank you. ESDA?
Nothing to report.
Sheriff's Department.
The only thing I have is just a few days away from having our onboard computers installed, trying to meet the criteria of the state for some stuff they'll implement later on in the year, so that's about all we've got going right now. Thank you.
Thank you. Ambulance service.
The new ambulance is here. It came in ahead of schedule, so we will be putting it on the road soon. We're getting everyone trained on it because it has different technology than what they're used to before we put it on the road. And this coming Monday at 5:30, we're having our EMS Week Appreciation Dinner, and you are welcome to come. And if you want to stop down and see this new high speed technology ambulance, come down. Pretty interesting.
Thank you. Probation.
Nothing new to report. Thank you.
Hey, Mike, can I ask, is there, have we heard anything as far as the state and different pets, non-pets? Have you had anything
No.
running down the pike in your area? 'Cause I
No,
know
we
we're
won't
pretty
hear-
dependent on those.
We won't hear anything from them until August, September.
September.
Yep.
Okay, thanks.
County Clerk.
The last time we met, I updated you on the election, April 17th election. We had to wait until the 21st to officially canvass the votes and allow time for absentee ballots and whatnot. That's all been done, completed. The results are official and they did not change any. The last two absentees we were waiting for never did come in, so we're all done, got that put to bed. Also regarding elections, I believe I mentioned to you that the election code calls for dividing a precinct whenever the population exceeds 800. And right now we have Paris 5 precinct with a voter registration of 915 as of last night. So I am working with our election vendor on dividing or shifting some of the voters into a nearby precinct, which is Paris 4, which only has 279 members. We're going to shoot for the 600 mark in both precincts. I don't want to give you all the details just yet because we don't know exactly how it's going to lay out, but I think we're hoping it's going to be as simple as taking Edgar Street as it runs east and west from Main Street till it ends. That's the northern border of Paris 4, and moving it north to Blackburn Street, which is just the next street. Well, it's
Next
There was a
through
couple.
street, right?
Next through street, yes, and catching some little neighborhoods, that may be enough. That's where we are right now. We're optimistic that it's gonna be a fairly simple process. This has to be done by next month's board meeting, and I'm confident we'll have that done, and it should just be fine, so. Question?
Do you have a figure of how much it cost per vote for the last election? Maybe I'm out of line by asking it, but.
You're not out of line. I did review that last week, or last month, and I believe it was around $10 a vote. But depending upon how you factor in all of our annual expenses, because sometimes some years we have 2 elections.
Right.
But as of the end of the election, it was $10 a vote.
I probably have seen a moment, forgot about it.
No, that's all right.
Okay, speaking on the other thing, how does that affect, like, on basically when county board districts are supposed to be relooked at, every 10 years?
Mhm.
And how does that integrate with this idea of precincts and their numbers? Because I'm a little leery. One is I don't know that that's happened. And two, whether or not, while we're doing this, should we, I thought that had to be done by the county boards actually before it went into effect, and I didn't.
Well, the county board districts, you're correct,
Mhm.
at the,
Because we do those by precincts though now, right? I mean, I have three of those, one of which you mentioned.
yeah. Do you have 4, 5?
Okay,
Is 4
5,
not in
7,
you?
and 12.
Okay.
I mean, well, what I'm wondering is like,
How does that
if we
all
do
affect?
that,
Yeah.
are we making sure that we're making that equality vote? Does anybody else follow me on this?
I understand exactly what you're saying, and that is where the vendor who has everything mapped out is gonna suggest and recommend. Yeah, that's what the statute tells us to do, is to divide those, but I understand that we don't wanna throw off the numbers in the board districts.
Well, but once every 10 years, that was a snapshot.
Yes.
There may be some changes during that 10-year period. Obviously,
People
wanna
move in and people
minimize it.
move out anyway.
if that can change with or without that snapshot, and then it'll be relooked at in 10 years.
Yeah, I'm not sure that was looked at in the last time.
Oh, yeah.
Because it's all stayed the same with regardless of number of people in those.
The 2010
Voting.
census,
Yeah,
Right.
it was looked at and reapportioned.
yeah,
So now we're not due to that until 2020.
and that board then did look at it, and determined that it was close enough not to.
Oh,
move
close
it.
enough, okay. I was gonna say, that'd be one nice thing also, if we could get our GPS up and running, and we'd have exact numbers
Well,
of everybody. If we're actually gonna try to have an equal assessment of the county board population in those districts, because you're right, some of these districts have several more than others.
Yeah, they can't have more than, what, a 10% variance?
I don't know what that is, Jeff. That's the only reason I bring it up now.
Well, that's right. Yes, you're right. Yes, you're
I
right.
don't know what.
And everything, I think at that point, that was under the Jim Keller era, that was looked
Sure, there's
at.
some state law that governs it.
Right.
I just didn't want us to do something, that would mess
Everything else.
that part up, because 4 and 5 are not in the same county board district.
Right.
See what I'm
And
saying?
that-
So I just,
Yep.
I
And
throw
again,
that out there for
that was just my,
FYI.
I probably went in too much detail, but at least that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
And it may be that,
It'd be fine.
we need to take Paris 5 and split it east and west and call it north and south. And then it all stays together, but then I've got an extra or a new precinct. So there are options, but we're working on that. And I wasn't gonna mention this, but I'm glad you reminded me. I spoke with the vendor at the last conference at IACO about GIS, putting all the election and the voting districts and precincts on the, getting that as a layer. And our vendor, my election vendor's got to speak to the GIS guy. What's his name?
Bruce Harris?
Yeah, Bruce Harris, but that's not his
Is
name.
that right, Dina? I don't.
It is.
Yes.
Okay.
Bruce Harris, but he's been our rep that helped us to get online to begin with.
Steve.
Whatever his name is, yeah, yeah. So working on that. Okay. Update you on our going online with our land records. We hit a snag, but we've got that fixed now, and we're on the path to getting it ready to go. There was a catch in the redaction of social security numbers, and we've isolated the problem, and now we've got a plan in place that we're working as we speak that's taking care of that. And so hopefully by next month or so, we'll be ready to go with that. So, and last but not least, we are almost finished with our portion of the tax cycle. Terry's has run some reports, and we're gonna proof those this afternoon. And I believe that, assuming there's no issues, if not today, by this week, we should be able to hand that off to the treasurer. So, and I believe then we're still 2 weeks ahead of time? Is that?
Yeah, that's a good estimate, yes.
Just roughly, so.
And as far as traditionally, it takes us 10 business days, start to finish, when it is lateraled to me and said, have at it. The only change that there is this year, I usually would drive to Springfield to pick up the tax bills. They have closed that office. Now they have a 24/7 massive publishing place in Minnesota or Wisconsin. And so they should be able to work us in. That shouldn't be an issue as far as getting them printed, and they're gonna ship them. So instead of me saving you money driving to Springfield and just paying me for my gas, you're gonna have to pay the shipping costs.
Now you're gonna have to drive to Minnesota.
Yeah, I do, and I take my fishing pole in with me. But,
And the state shipped their own business out of state. Nice.
no, wasn't the state. It was our vendor, our software vendor, had to downsize one of their offices, so now they're.
Oh, okay, so that's not a state fund.
No, no. I just went to Springfield, that's just where their office was located.
Does anybody have any questions for me? Thank you.
Thank you. Now we'll get the committee reports. Jeff? You?
Airport, the board, the advisory board is recommending repairing posts in the T-hangars, 22 or so for roughly $5,000. The committee is going to act upon that, and I want to inform you on that. There's posts in the hangars that are starting to rot and lose integrity, and so we're going to replace some of those posts. And in a segmented way, we'll do so many now, and then so many and so many. The hangar door, the main hangar doors, the engineering, et cetera, has been passed along to the Coles County Regional Planning Commission, and we're in the process of researching and searching grants, whether they be energy and or at all, so that we can get some repairs made to those doors and get them economical as far as what's been identified as energy. We're losing a lot of energy through those doors by them not being insulated, and at the same time improve their integrity. Now, whether that means replacing part or parcel of them, we'll just have to see at this point. I talked to Jim Mills, gave me a call yesterday, and he wanted me to make sure that we were aware and that the public was aware that if not-for-profit organizations or clubs and organizations wish a large facility to use, that they're willing to entertain it if it fits into their operation. And that facility is available at the main hangar for them, for folks to use. He also indicated to me that starting in June and July, we would see not just increased activity, obviously, in the flyover, or what is it, crop dusting, but also in actual business out there at the hangars. So he just wanted to make everybody aware that they will work to be part of the community and offer their facilities whenever they can. Let's see. As far as the budget, I think I've made it clear to a couple people. I said that we had, on Monday, we had 41.66% of the year gone, and it's actually 50%, which makes us look a whole lot better. I woke up about 4:30 one morning and realized what I'd done, and felt a whole lot better. I went to bed with kind of a pit in my stomach, wondering, what problems and what we were gonna do about certain issues, but we are in fact at 50%, and our expenditures are slightly over 40%, including the last payroll of the month, which will come out in 2 weeks. So we're a much better picture. We're still dealing with a couple of issues that we've got in departments, and we're handling those as a finance committee. So, and that's about, let's see, all I think I've got at this point.
Thank you. Mr. Zuber.
I don't really have anything at this time, other than like preliminary on that audit report, and what Joe was saying over the last 3 years. I appreciate all the department heads and everybody else, how you've all worked to try to keep everything in check, and Jeff's done a lot of work on that too, and even the county board standpoint of trying to drive down some of that deficit, so. That's all I have.
Andy?
A couple things on the courthouse. You notice there's a big crane sitting out back. So we had a company come in and look at the roof. Midland Engineering out of South Bend, Indiana, scheduled to have them come look at it. Scheduled to take they said it'd take about a day and a half to do the estimate. And he came at about 7 yesterday, he called me about 10:30 and said they were done. And he said it really didn't look very good up there. There's a lot of broken shingles. I said something about the metal. Is it paintable? And he said there's a lot of places where it's rusted through. So, as far as that goes, I'd be premature to give any dollar figure, because I asked him and he said, we estimate, they took a lot of pictures, wrote a lot of things down, and they'll get back with me by next month. I'll have certainly hope to have a figure on what their estimate is.
Based on what you said, it's gonna be more than we like.
Right, it's gonna be a lot more than we'd like, I think. That's one thing I asked him. I said, does it look like, some hail damage up there? And he said there's a lot of damage up there. The south side was one of the, at least it was indicated as one of the worst damage, which would be an indication. That's normally where your weather comes from. It comes in from the south, so, southwest side. So anyway, I'll get back as soon as he gets me what their estimate is. We'll kind of go from there.
When does this machine have to go?
It'll leave today.
I was
So the good news is it saved one day's rent, because
I was thinking out loud that maybe you want to get an insurance adjuster to look at it while that's here. Or if there's hail damage. Or maybe they don't need to look at it. Maybe they can see what they have to see.
I'll get with.
They can either go off the pictures, or they could.
Yeah,
That's what I was
right.
wondering if they could.
I bet they can.
I asked him, I said, will this have a lot of pictures? He said, well, there'll be a lot of pictures that have the thing, so. Takes a special person to want to get up and that basket.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Right.
And that would be them
I've
for
done
it.
that.
That would be them for it.
I have two.
I would say that the insurance would prefer just the pictures of it.
Yep, there it is, yeah.
Anything else?
No, I just, one more thing, a couple more things real quick. The heat pump, and air conditioning in the judges' chambers, they put in the second stage of that last week. And I ran into Marty yesterday, and she said that they'd always had trouble cooling it up there, and they had it set on 70, and the judge said he thought it was a little cold up there. I get it. She says it's working a lot better than the old one did.
Want to keep them happy.
Right, that's right. And one more thing, Mark Sullivan's gonna, there's a couple headers that when they did the tower restoration needed replaced. And he said within the next week or so, you ought to be able to get up and take care of that. Also put some cold molding around in the circuit clerk's office. So that's about it.
You noticed that the sidewalk got broke.
I know,
Okay.
we'll,
Mark can look at that or
I'll
take
have
care
a
of
look
that
at
too.
too.
I think he's worked on, or he's replaced some before.
It's part of the old sidewalk, I looked at it, it's not, that's probably one of the worst places you could have crawled up, is right there, but it's not very thick.
Stuff happens.
It does. That's a heavy machine, so.
I thought maybe with it being as white a rubber as what it was, it might mitigate some of that when it came
And
out, but
he crawled one wheel all the way around on it, which I was a little concerned about, but it didn't affect it then, but it was just that, the pressure coming up onto it that did that.
Did you go up with him and inspect that?
No, I watched it from the ground.
I appreciate that, because that's a lot of liability if you get up there.
I asked Gary yesterday, I said, you wanna ride? And he said, he goes, I really wouldn't bother me, because I think the liability issue is the thing, so.
I'm glad.
put him in one of the harnesses and David would want to.
Bungee diver.
Anything else?
No.
Thank you. Dan?
Amber received a private donation to animal shelter, so she called, she wanted to put an outside pen for dogs to get more exercise. And somebody comes in and wants to adopt, they can spend a little time with the animal, see if they really want it or not, so. I called Aaron again, I kind of bothered him what's going on. He was willing to help, but we found out we didn't need his help, so I still appreciate his offer. You owe me something there. So, there is a pad there, so we're gonna buy a fence and post and put a little tap or a outside pin. And then, the air conditioning and heating at the dock department is moving very slowly. I've asked the company for an estimate on sort of a roundabout figure and haven't heard from them back, so probably don't want to get it. So right now it's sort of in limbo, so still working on it.
Mr. Chairman, can I comment on something? You kind of remind me of this, Mr. Bruner. Behind the annex, the asphalt or whatever it is worse than sad. And whoever plows for behind the next buildings, they shoot across to us. And I'm not saying they've removed any, but that doesn't help matters. I'm just saying I was thinking at one time it was discussed that we had our own resources where we might be able to work together with a certain department to maybe help us back there. I'm just throwing that out there.
You really think the animal shelter's gonna be able to help you out?
Yep. We'll get those dogs out there and keep them from plowing across our lot like that,
If you
yeah.
put a pin out there, they can't scrape it away.
We got plenty of pit bulls we can loan them.
That's right.
So just thinking out loud, thank you.
Oh, the building grounds will take a look at that. And you haven't brought that to their attention, have you?
I'll have lemonade and cookies out back on the table.
Thank you. Anything else? Anything else coming for this meeting?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I move that we go in closed session to discuss appointments, employment, compensation, discipline, performance, or dismissal of specific employees of the public body and pending litigation.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to go into closed session for the previously mentioned reasons. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion carried.
Don, is that kind of
Yes, it